Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's BU Professional Development webinar, Returning to Work After a Break. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm a member of the Career Programs team here in the BU Office of Alumni Relations. Today's webinar is sponsored by BU Alumni Relations and is part of our Alumni Career Weeks 2019 series. This series is offered to our 335,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. And we aim to do this by providing our alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. I know that we have alumni joining us today from some very far away places. For the first time ever, we have an alum tuning in from Zimbabwe. Hello to you. We've got alumni in China, Colombia, Spain, Taiwan, Escondido, California, Fort Collins, Colorado, Atlanta, Ewa Beach, Hawaii, Schaumburg, Illinois, Baton Rouge, Seaside Heights, New Jersey, which I believe is the home of the Jersey Shore, Valley Stream, New York, Snoqualmie, Washington, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Everett, Falmouth, Hopkinton, Marlborough, Marblehead, Marston's Mills, Waltham, West Newton, and more. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your participation in this and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the on our Zoom online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentations, I'll ask that you contact Zoom support directly. And you can do that at 1-888-799-9666. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on our website found at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you may have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation, and we'll go over them at the end. To access the Q&A feature, you're going to want to hover over your screen, and either at the top or the bottom, you should see the Zoom control menu pop up. From there, you'll select Q&A, click on that, and then it allows you to just type in your questions. So I please encourage you to do that throughout Jamie's presentation today. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, BU College of Arts and Sciences alumna Jaime Bronstein. For the past 18 years as the relationship expert, Jaime has been guiding people as they navigate their way through the dating and relationship world. She uses a unique approach to helping people manifest love. Jaime also works with couples and people going through a breakup or a divorce. Jaime focuses on teaching her clients how to unconditionally love themselves, how to be vulnerable, tap into their inner strength, and live more authentically in order to achieve their relationship goals. Jaime will not only help you heal and extinguish any negative relationship habits, but she'll also provide you with the tools needed in order to have a successful relationship. Jaime has a certificate in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica, a Master of Social Work from NYU, and as you know, a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Boston University. After completing her postgraduate work, she went on to become a licensed clinical social worker. Jaime lives in San Diego with her husband and their 3-year-old son, who I had the pleasure of meeting online the other day. When she's not hard at work, she enjoys spending time with her family and friends, practicing yoga, eating pizza, and occasionally singing a karaoke song or 2 or 5. Jaime works with people in person via phone, through Skype, and by way of her live chat on her website. You can get immediate relationship advice for those moments where you just need some automatic help on the spot. Jaime, we just went through your extensive qualifications on relationship advice, helping people through difficult relationships. I know that a lot of people might not see the link to what we're talking about today. You've already done a webinar for us that people can find online about, it was, I think, managing difficult relationships at work. The whole point today is that returning to work after a break is quite an interruption for people's lives. There's a lot of emotions involved in those things. They all involve relationships with other people. And so I do think that you're uniquely qualified to talk about this topic today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll stop sharing my slide deck here. If you want to open up yours, the floor is all yours.
Sure, thanks. And I just want to say before I start, thanks so much for having me today. And shout out especially to Escondido, which is like Escondido, California. It's about 10, 15 minutes away from me. And then you mentioned Schaumburg, Illinois. I'm from Chicago. So
you've got BU connections all over the place.
And of course, I used to live in Boston when I went to school. So I'm going to, let's see, I will bring up my show for you guys.
And while you're bringing up your slide deck, I'll let our viewers know that I kind of sprung it on you that you were going to be on camera today. And so I've given you approval, your sanction to go ahead and turn your video off while you're doing your presentation so as not to be a distraction.
Oh, it's all good. I showered. I just did not have the makeup on yet because it's early in the morning here. Okay, so.
I don't have any on yet either. Are you having trouble getting your slide deck shared?
So have I shared the screen yet, or should I?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Let me know if you see anything.
Perfect. And you'll just hit that play button. Now it looks like it's on your last slide again, so you might want to back up.
Okay. And
so on the left-hand side, click. It keeps picking your last slide. That's why we're running into that problem. On the left-hand, yeah, there you go. Now, yep. All right, you're good to go.
Okay. So I will. Are we good now?
Yep,
Ready
all good. Yep, okay. Thanks, Jamie.
Sorry, I am so not a computer person. I am a therapist. not do well with computers, but here we go. And some of this beginning part will be a little redundant, but here's my presentation. So, hi, I'm Jaime Bronstein. I'm so happy to be here today to talk about a topic that is not often spoken about. I am a relationship psychotherapist practicing for 18 years, and I work in private practice with singles, couples, and people going through breakups and divorces. I also run my website, therelationshipexpert.com, and do instant chat message therapy with people all around the world. I'm currently working on my first book on how to manifest love, and I also do an on-camera radio show once a week on LA Talk Radio called Love Talk Live. Today, I'll be talking about ways to return to work after a break. I'll be covering specifically returning after a medical leave, maternity and paternity leave, and coming back after the loss of a loved one. I'll be going through these situations that everyone will be impacted by at some point, whether they personally go through it or they have a coworker going through it. Everyone can benefit from having some extra knowledge surrounding these particular situations. I believe that having some insight and some tools in your back pocket can always be helpful. Now I'm going to go to the next slide, which for some reason it's not letting me. There we go. Is it up?
It's up. You're good to go.
Hallelujah. Okay. Slide number 2. Okay. So first I'm going to address going back to work after being on medical leave. First of all, it's important to take it slow. When going back to work after medical leave, the most important thing to remember is that you should honor what feels best for you and take care of yourself as much as possible. If you feel like you can't do something 100%, then just tell your boss and he or she will understand. Take your time in your transition back. Don't feel like you need to rush into things exactly the same way you did before. If you need assistance, don't hesitate to ask, as there are people at every office who would be happy to help you in any way that you need. You don't have to share your story. When you go back to work, people will want to engage in conversation with you about the fact that you haven't been there, and they will do it with the greatest of intentions. However, don't feel like you need to share in detail why you were on medical leave. Sometimes a medical leave is for a broken arm, but sometimes it could be for a medical health issue like cancer or another form of illness that could be extremely personal and private. Use your intuition. If you feel comfortable and feel that you can trust your coworker, share with them. And if not, then you can be vague or just say something like, I had some medical issues, but they're all good now. Thanks for your concern. And then if you'd like to, a helpful tool is to use redirection. Change the subject if you'd like to talk about something else. You can put the focus back to them and ask how they've been since you were last at work. Or you could say something like, that board meeting this morning sounds like our company's in a great place. So next point is you can try to reconnect with people. Make it a point to reconnect outside the office with coworkers you were close with to get back in the routine again and pick up where you left off. The sooner you do that, the easier the transition will be. Being in the spotlight. Remind yourself that once you've been back for a few days, the attention won't be on you anymore. It's kind of like Hollywood. Think about the story on the cover of an entertainment magazine. There is the big reveal. The story is told, and then the next day, someone else is on the cover, and it's someone else's turn to be in the spotlight. Things are a big deal at the beginning, and all eyes are on the person in the spotlight. But after a short period of time, that attention moves on to someone else. Remind yourself of this, and if you are the type of person who doesn't like the attention focused on you, then most people worry that their coworkers will be focusing on them more than they actually will be. Not that people don't care, but they have their own life to focus on, and in addition, they are busy with their own work. Accepting help. If someone comes up to you and asks if they can help you in any way, please don't feel shy. For instance, if you are struggling financially when you get back to work because of all the medical bills you have had to deal with, you can be honest and you can feel comfortable enough and you can ask them, would they be kind enough to set up a GoFundMe account for you or something of that sort? We live in a time when I feel that people are going out of their way to help other people. So if someone offers their help, feel free to take that opportunity and ask for what you need. You can never go wrong when you accept someone's offer to help. Moving on to our next slide. So now we're going to be talking about coming back to work after a maternity or paternity leave. First of all, please feel what you're going to feel. We all know that having a baby is one of the biggest changes one will ever experience in life, in the most beautiful way. However, these changes affect all aspects of our lives, including our work life. Your schedule changes, you're getting less sleep, and all of a sudden you have entered into a whole new realm of responsibility, the responsibility of another human's life. So if you think that you're going to go back to work as the same person you were before, it's just not possible. However, you will be going back as a newer version, a version of yourself that has just opened your heart a little bit more than you realized was possible. And for a lot of people, but not everyone, you will feel more love than you could ever have imagined, but things will be different. If you're feeling guilty for having your independent life from your newborn, remind yourself that it's healthy to have your life at work. You are still a person who deserves to have a life outside of your child. It's hard because you feel pulled, and not necessarily an obligational pull, but a pull on your heartstrings. It gets easier. Remind yourself of that. I'd also like to address the fact that some people welcome the opportunity to get away and don't feel bad, and that's okay too. We are all different. If you feel that you're going to work, if you feel like going to work is a way for you to get away from the sometimes craziness at home, then you should honor that. And once again, don't feel guilty for how you feel. We all feel certain things at certain times throughout our life. And one of the best things you can do is to acknowledge how you are feeling. And don't try to feel anything else than what you are feeling at any given moment. Our feelings are a gateway to our truths and help us to access our authentic self. If anyone ever says something to you like, well, you shouldn't feel that way, you can simply respond by telling them that you appreciate them trying to help you, but you're going to try to honor how you feel, and they should do the same. A baby brings about a huge change in your life. Mothers and fathers both experience extreme changes in life. However, since women have hormonal and physical changes, at times it can be a bit more challenging to integrate back into the work field, as they have experienced postpartum depression and lifestyle changes. Men's lives change as well in their own way. There's an added responsibility in your life, whether you are a new mother or new father. And of course, there are also couples who adopt or use a surrogate, and they will have their own unique experiences as well. It doesn't matter how you brought a baby into this world. The bottom line is that it's life-changing regardless. Work in itself is a huge responsibility. Now add a child in, and all of a sudden you find yourself feeling overwhelmed and pulled in all different directions. When you have those moments, just take a deep breath and remind yourself that your boss would not hire you if you couldn't handle the work. All the work will get done. Also, remember that you are extremely capable, and millions of moms and dads have done this before you, so you can do it too. Feeling segregated / FOMO. And for those of you that don't know what FOMO is, it's fear of missing out. When you return to work, you might find that you aren't able to participate in certain after-work gatherings, and that you may feel a little lonely and segregating at times. The happy hour that you used to go to with coworkers, or the group coffee or brunch meetup on the weekends, just might not be happening for you all the time. Do your best to remember that this is all for a good cause and the trade-off is worth it. You are at a different time of life now, and being home for bedtime or spending the weekend with your family is important. I'm definitely not saying that you should stop having a social life. Not at all. I think it's extremely important to maintain a social life forever. I'm just saying that you might not be able to go to every happy hour event, but you should be able to attend an event occasionally, even if that means getting a babysitter. So before we did this, Jeff and I were talking, and Jeff actually has an amazing story to talk about something that he experienced when he went back to work after having a baby. So Jeff, take it away.
I don't know if I would call it amazing, but Jamie, you and I were talking about how I know you wanted to specifically talk about how fathers can be impacted after time away and having a baby and things like that. And one of the things that I've talked to other people about as an example is it seems a little bit silly and a little bit surface, but it's a change in how I engage at the workplace and how those things are tough. And the example that I used was I've been working at BU for almost 20 years. And I think I played on a summer softball team every year until I had our son. I didn't have our son. My wife had our son, but we had him together. And I currently work here at BU, and our office is almost 200 people. And so the summer softball team was an excellent opportunity to make some important connections with people who are technically on my team, who I don't really ever see in person. I don't work alongside day by day. And making those connections allowed me to feel more engaged in the kind of work that I was doing. I knew people in the hallway. When I would, go get a cup of coffee, there'd be somebody there that I could talk to who I'd connected with. And after our son, I did make the decision that, it was more important for me to get home, to pitch in over there, and to be there for bedtime than it was to play softball. Even though, sports has been an important part of my life, certainly exercise is something that I'm not getting as much of now after our son was born. And that, you use the word trade-off, and that to me was exactly what that was. At the end of the day, I feel like I made the right decision for our family, but the truth is I'm no longer making those kinds of connections over something fun like summer softball. And that has changed my feeling about my position in the office. And so, yeah, Jamie, I was curious to hear your take on those kinds of things and about those kinds of changes in people's lives.
Yeah, and also just remember at every point in your child's life, everything is a season. So it's a lot more intense when you have a baby. I mentioned survival mode. So just everybody out there, just remember that as your child gets older and more independent, you won't have to be home as much. It's really just, I think, at the beginning, in the first couple years, where you really need to be around a lot more, and they appreciate it. And Jeff, you're doing an amazing job. He muted himself.
Thank you. I'm glad we're recording this so I can show it to my wife.
Yeah. Wife is doing an amazing job. Okay, so moving on. Thank you, Jeff. How to be present at work when your mind is back at home with the baby. I know that it will seem impossible at times to be able to keep your focus on your work, but you can do it. It's actually really healthy to be able to be present wherever you are. When you are at work, give it all you got. And when you are back at home, give your baby all of your attention. I believe that having balance in life is crucial to having a peaceful life. The more balanced you are, the more that all the aspects of your life will flow. You know that you're out of balance when things seem to be too much to handle. I am very familiar with this topic, as I have a 3.5-year-old little boy. After he was born, I went through a period where A, I wasn't sure I even wanted to go back to work, and B, I had no idea how I would be able to work and be a mom. Yes, I had seen my friends and family go through this period of time and even saw my own mom do it beautifully. But I definitely felt overwhelmed and just really wanted to only focus on my baby. As time went on, and as I started to exit out of the survival mode time period, I found myself desiring to get back to work. For me, all aspects of my life are fulfilling. So when I started work again, it was a reminder of how important it is for me to have my independent life outside of my child. I always remember my clients and friends saying, happy wife, happy life. But I added on a phrase, which is happy mom, happy baby. As parents, we need to put our oxygen masks on first in order to adequately care for our children. I believe that when you feel fulfilled in the work that you do outside of the home, Then you can show up with more strength, willingness, and love in your heart to share at home. And now, even though my baby is a toddler, getting a little emotional, it still applies. When I start to have human moments of feeling guilty when I'm traveling for work, I just remind myself that I'm doing good work that's helping people and that my son is going to love me no matter what. And it actually makes me appreciate the time that we do have together because we aren't together every second of the day. When I started to work again, feeling a little ambivalent about it and feeling sad about not being able to be with my son 24/7, a colleague of mine, a fellow therapist, told me a story about her life. She is a mom of 4, and she told me that she wasn't working as much as she works now when her first 3 were growing up. After her 3rd child was born, for some reason her work started picking up, so she wasn't able to be around as much. She said that she feels like she is actually closest with her youngest child because she and her really take advantage of the time that they do have together. I was inspired after hearing that story, and I gave myself permission to do what I needed to do to have a successful and fulfilling career. Before I move on to our next topic, I feel that it's important to address the population of parents who go back to work after raising their children. This can be very difficult and can cause a lot of angst, but if you allow it to, it can be a wonderful time of renewal and a new chapter in your life, which can turn out to be amazing for you if you let it. If you feel like when you return back to work that you aren't caught up on the current trends and you need some help learning new techniques, don't hesitate to let your boss know that you'd like some extra training. He or she will be happy to help you because they would rather have you be able to function at work rather than not adequately being able to do your job. Once you've been there for some time, you will feel right at home. Put yourself out there and introduce or reintroduce yourself to people. If you present yourself as open and friendly versus shut off, then you will soon have some new friendly coworkers as well. So before we move on to our 3rd topic, we would like to do a poll, and Jeff is going to bring that up. And I see it. Can everybody see it, or we don't know? Or
it should be up, and there's, Jamie, as you know, there's sort of 2 parts on this, 2 questions on this one individual poll. So people can go ahead and select their answers. Jamie, do you want to read through the questions and the possible answers?
So number 1, have you personally experienced going back to work after a break? We were just curious what the population of you guys would be. And then 2, what have you personally experienced or seen happen the most when someone comes back to work after a break? And the answers are issues with honest communication, issues with connection, feeling of, it should be being overwhelmed. And
whoops, sorry, my bad.
So, and do they know how to lock in their answers?
Yep, people are doing it. We've got about half of our guests have clicked in with their answers. So we'll give it a couple more seconds here. Sorry about that typo, Jamie. It's totally my bad.
Yeah, you're human.
Thank you for that validation.
Tell your wife, Jeff's wife.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's about 2/3 of folks who've chimed in. Give it just another second here. And as a reminder, while we're waiting for those final answers to come in, I'm sure a lot of you have questions already for Jamie. Please go ahead and type those in now using the Q&A box. And again, you can access that from the Zoom menu. Click on Q&A. All right, Jamie, I'm going to go ahead and publish these results. So you should see them in front of you.
Wow, awesome. So it looks like 74% of you have personally experienced going back to work after a break. So this is so wonderful. And then 26 people, which is 74% of you, chose feelings of being overwhelmed over all of the others. So this definitely makes sense. I'm so happy that you guys have tuned in today to just listen to this, and hopefully you've gotten some tools that can help you and then also can help your coworkers or anybody in the future that goes back to work after a break. And I commend you for having the courage to go back to work after a break and to go through all the overwhelm and all the feelings that you've gone through.
And interesting to note that people are, there is a significant percentage of people who are having issues with connection and isolation too.
Yes, absolutely. I think all of these choices people go through probably at one point or another. So, and thank you also for being honest. and vulnerable. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to our final topic. Returning to work after the loss of a loved one. First of all, it's important to take it slow. Going back to work after experiencing the loss of a loved one can be difficult, to say the least. If you are still going through grief or feeling depressed, it can be incredibly hard to feel like you will be able to function at work. The good news is that we are a resilient species, and actually, the more you stay busy and focused on other things besides your loss, the better you will be able to cope with the enormous effect the loss has had on your life. Years ago, I read an article that Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, wrote 30 days after her husband passed away, and it impacted me profoundly regarding how I view relationships with people who have lost a loved one. It's relevant to all of us, as we will have to deal with this tough situation at one point or another. Especially in the workplace, everyone can use a little guidance and insight into the most appropriate way to communicate that you care. Sheryl says, I have learned that I never really knew what to say to others in need. I think I got this all wrong before. I tried to assure people that it would be okay, thinking that hope was the most comforting thing I could offer. Real empathy is sometimes not insisting that it will be okay, but acknowledging that it is not. Those who have said, you will find a new normal, but it will never be as good, comfort me more because they know and speak the truth. Even a simple, how are you, almost always asked with the best intentions, is better replaced with, how are you today? When I am asked, how are you, I stop myself from shouting, my husband died a month ago, how do you think I am? But when I hear, how are you today, I realize that the person knows that the best that I can do right now is to get through each day. I love that Sheryl teaches us this very important concept. How you are today gives you a chance to be in the moment rather than answering generally. I feel that she has been a pioneer in the world of loss. She has opened all of our eyes to the elephant in the room and opened up a space to let that elephant out of the room. There doesn't have to be an elephant to begin with. If we can all get comfortable with communicating and breaking down those barriers that prevent us from really connecting with one another, things will flow more easily. Sheryl also teaches us that whether we are at the office or at home, we take our emotions with us wherever we go. And here is a quote that you guys can see. I'll just read it from Sheryl. Bring your whole self to work. I don't believe we have a professional self Monday through Friday and a real self the rest of the time. It is all professional and it is all personal. Sheryl also says, I know that so many colleagues at work have faced truly hard things. And I think when we are there for each other, not just pretending hard things aren't happening, but acknowledging them and supporting each other very explicitly, we build better communities, better companies, better workplaces. In addition, she also went on to talk about how helpful it was when her boss, Mark Zuckerberg, would build her up in meetings by letting her know she had a good idea. It made her feel like she was contributing again and what she had to say had worth. It really just helped her get back into believing in herself again. If you feel comfortable, it's a good idea to have an honest conversation with your coworkers and even your boss about how you will be doing the best that you can on a daily basis and ask for them to please be patient with you. I know how much Sheryl's story has inspired me, and I hope that it has done the same for you. I feel that she is such a beautiful example of the importance of showing up authentically in this world, at work, and everywhere. As I mentioned before, if someone asks you if you'd like to help in any way, it's always a good idea to accept the offer if you feel comfortable. You could say something like, yes, I'd love it if you could send dinner over sometime because some nights I really just don't feel like cooking. Or you could tell them that you've set up a GoFundMe in your loved one's honor, and you can give them that information to donate if they'd like to. Loss is never easy, but hopefully with these inspirational options, your transition back to work can be just as smooth as possible. Finally, sometimes people that are out of work, not because of something personal, but because they are the ones helping to take care of a loved one. Just know that everything I spoke about today can be applied to that situation as well. Thanks so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure talking about such an important topic. I hope that you have learned some new tools and some new perspectives that you can take with you into the workplace and can actually apply a lot of what I've said today in your life outside of work as well. I hope all of you have a beautiful day or night, depending where you are in the world. And finally, so this sheet is showing you how you can contact me. And I know that if you don't catch this right now, Jeff, they will be able to access this at a later date, correct? So
yeah, we'll put that up on our website.
You can email me, you can check out my website, my Instagram, and then, or check out my radio show on LA Talk Radio. And my shows are also listed on my website under radio show. And I'm also offering a complimentary 20-minute phone or Skype Zoom session, your choice. So just feel free to email me and we can set that up. And thanks so much.
And we've got some great questions that have come in, Jamie. Thank you for doing this again. And I could see that we probably will have a lot of people who will be interested in taking you up on that 20-minute conversation. So thank you so much for offering that for folks that are here. Let's dive into some of the questions. And again, folks, please feel free to type in your question in the Q&A box. Great question from Sarah. Sarah, thank you for asking this. Jamie, if you could talk about this, when the medical issue behind taking a break is related to mental health, what are good ways to talk about this when you're speaking with potential hiring managers, human resources, future bosses? So, if you're unemployed after a mental health break, how do you talk about that?
Yeah, I would just say, just be as honest as possible. They know that you're human. Who knows, maybe they've even experienced something in their life, or they've known somebody who's experienced an issue with mental health. Just stay in your authentic self and remind yourself you're human. This is something that you could not have avoided. It happened for your growth and your learning, and that there's no reason why you can't function the way that you used to. And, just be honest, have a sit down. And if for some reason your boss doesn't get it, then, maybe that's not the right work environment for you. Because I believe that we should all be open-minded and all loving no matter what. So, just go with it, be honest, honor yourself, and take that chance to be vulnerable with your boss.
Thanks, Jamie. Could you talked about this a little bit, but Amanda's asking if you can kind of elaborate a little bit. You talk quite a bit about going back to work right after, maybe 3 months after having a baby. But how do you feel like the re-entry process is different for people who have taken 20 years off to raise their kids? I know you specifically talked about that, but people who've been out of work for decades as they've raised a family, how do you feel like that re-entry process is different for those folks?
So is Amanda someone who's returning after a bunch of years, or is she returning after the baby?
She's after a number of years. It seems like she's been raising a family for a long time.
Okay, so first of all, congratulations. I love that you're taking this chance. I honor your courage. I acknowledge you. And I would just say, like I spoke about, just embrace that this is your new life, step into it and be open to all of these beautiful gifts that are going to be coming your way, and step in with confidence. And I'd be happy to work with you on this to kind of getting back to yourself, just going back as your most authentic self possible. And also just like I just answered, be honest with your coworkers and your boss. If there's something that you're not catching on to, don't let that take away from your confidence. Just know that you can absolutely handle anything. Because once again, I said, you would not be hired or rehired to do this job if you weren't capable.
One of the things that we just really didn't talk about, and Tara is wondering, we talked about very specific life changes that happen to people, medical conditions. One of the things you and I talked about, Jamie, was just people taking a break to take care of an ill family member. How do any of the things that you talked about, how are they different for somebody who's just been out of work for a long time after a layoff?
Okay, so someone's bringing up the question of when they got laid off from one job and now they're re-entering the workplace after.
Exactly.
Okay. So once again, I believe that seeing a coach or a therapist is extremely important to bring back your confidence. And maybe the layoff wasn't even because maybe you weren't performing, maybe it was just because the company was, getting smaller or whatever. But regardless, I would say do that work to work on yourself before you re-enter, to know that you are capable, to know that you have worth, and to know that you're going to be accepted and people are going to bring you in with open arms. So yeah, just definitely do that work before you re-enter so that you're in a really good place just to be like, here I am, I'm here to do good work. And I know I'm going to be an asset to this company.
I also want to just jump in here and say regarding the layoff situation and kind of the nuts and bolts of kind of like reapplying to the job. Like for those of you who are re-entering, looking for a new job, please also check out our webinar library. We've had a number of career coaches do webinars for us specifically about how to address a break in work or an absence, a long, time away from work on a resume, how to talk about that in an interview process. What Jamie's talking about today is more sort of like managing the emotions around these extended breaks from work. But for more of the nuts and bolts, we've got lots of webinars in our online library that you might find helpful. And again, you can access that on our website by going to bu.edu/alumni. And from there, if you just click on the careers section, there's a very clear link to our online webinar library. So please do check that out. Jamie, you talked a lot about the changing dynamics of a relationship with your partner when going back to work after having a baby. Can you talk more about, and not even so much about going back to work, but the impacts at home, how to work with a spouse or partner on managing some of those day-to-day challenges, cleaning, cooking. You and I talked offline about, for those parents that are having a really difficult time with sleep. Any advice for folks about how to manage those relationships?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd say definitely try to communicate as much as possible and try to communicate honestly as much as possible with what you're needing, what you're lacking. And, when people are sleep deprived, especially, and in this new situation with this huge responsibility, emotions can definitely run high. So I would also say that if you are feeling really, really emotional and you're not able to communicate in like a calm manner, I always tell my clients to honor that and take a step away. If you need to just calm down before you communicate. Also know that your spouse or your partner or boyfriend or girlfriend, they're not going to always react the way that you would. We all are so different emotionally. So to honor each other, that everybody has a different process, and just really communicate as well as you can. And if you are having a disagreement, don't do it in front of the baby because they do know what's going on.
Jamie, I'm thinking about my own. I'm very lucky. Boston University takes very good care of new parents, both male and female. And I was able to take a pretty good break after our son was born. And I'm remembering that first Sunday night before going back for my first day on Monday and just having all kinds of, I don't want to say I was wound up because, again, I felt very well taken care of by BU. But what advice do you have for folks who are staring down that first day back in the office after a pretty good break?
Yeah, the first thought that came to me was, just try to be present because you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel like you're just pulled back at home, and it's going to feel like all these people are coming over to you, and which is so wonderful, and they have amazing intentions. But just try to be present and just embrace that love, because you will have, and not necessarily love, but it actually is, people are going to be happy that you're back. They're going to congratulate you. And so just, I'd say focus your attention on being in the moment of, just being with whatever emotion that you're feeling. and because there will be a lot of emotions, but really try to be present if you can, and just remind yourself every day is going to get more normal. It's going to feel more normal. The more that you go back, it's going to, be like you never left. But obviously we know that you've had a huge life change.
And then lastly, my question for you, in doing this role for the alumni office, I've been doing it for about 6 years. I've been very lucky to meet hundreds of alumni in some of our biggest alumni cities. And I often run into folks who have been out of work for a while, sometimes of their own choosing, sometimes not, who get really depressed when they have a hard time finding that first job after that break. And, obviously we're talking about relationships today, but you're a licensed social worker. You've been a practicing therapist for a long time. Specifically for those alumni who are really feeling a depression related to their inability to find a job, what advice do you, other than I'm sure, get the counsel of a therapist, what advice do you have for those alumni who are really suffering from depression and anxiety related to their inability to get a job?
Yeah, I would say to do your best to change your story, to get out of that story that you can't get a job, because you absolutely can. It's actually, if you do change that story, once you shift into believing and knowing that you can get a job, it's almost like the job's gonna come to you. So you have a lot of power in this. People don't realize that, but you have a lot of power in changing your story. And once you shift your perspective and your mindset, things will definitely change. So it's a matter of believing in yourself and you being able to make that shift in order to manifest that job that you want. Also, if you can just acknowledge and believe that everything is meant to be, and that when the right job is supposed to come along, it will. But you need to get out of your way first. And once again, this is one of my favorite things that I work with people, getting past those barriers that are preventing our own selves from manifesting what we want and what we need and what we deserve. So I'd be happy to work with you on that, or just definitely do that work, because it's a gift to yourself.
And I'm constantly defending myself, not defending myself, but outing myself as not, I don't identify as a career coach, but I'm doing this for work for a long time. And one of the things that I found is that people who get caught up in that depression and anxiety of not being able to get a job, often they get stuck and really aren't able to do a couple things each day to feel like they're moving the ball forward. And that's where, for those of you who haven't explored our website, there's a ton of resources. Again, I talked a lot about our recorded webinars, but there's a bunch of things that I think that you can access through our website that might be helpful for you to some small wins, things that you could do, like watching a webinar about sharpening your resume skills, those kinds of things that I think you can work into the mix to keep feeling like you're moving the ball forward, as opposed to just sort of waiting for that right job to come around. So Jaime, you are somebody I've really enjoyed working with. I feel like you bring a really unique lens to something that a lot of people are dealing with. And so I can't thank you enough for doing this webinar for us today and all that you've done for BU.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor to be here. And Jeff, you're doing such good work also.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of our guests for tuning in today. I specifically want to thank those of you who've donated to BU and supported us. We wouldn't be able to do this work without your support. As I mentioned, this webinar is being offered as part of our Alumni Career Weeks 2019 series. We still have a couple days left in March, and we've got a couple more great webinars coming up. Please visit our website at bu.edu/careerweeks to see the remaining events, and you can sign up for those now. As always, if you or any BU alum would be interested in hosting a professional development webinar just like this, I'm always looking for great speakers. Please feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you again, everybody, and thank you again, Jaime.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Same. Take care, everybody.